I hope everyone is doing well and keeping safe. And a big welcome to yet another episode of coffeepechaHRcha. And this one is a very special episode because most of our guests are entrepreneurs, some great guys who have built an organization and scaled up successfully. And these people are rare who build these organizations. But even rare are those people who have not done it once, twice, but thrice in their careers. So I'm super excited and privileged to host Visham Sikand on Coffee Pe Charcha. Visham is currently the founder chairman of Goals101. And Goals101 runs and owns an alpha platform, which is basically a big data platform, helping banks and brands kind of understand their customer better and provide contextual offerings. Before that, Visham started his entrepreneurial journey in 2008, founded Plat5, and then he also founded a very successful organization called Indian Health Organization, which was later acquired by a US company called Itna. So Visham, big thanks for accepting our invite and giving us some time. I know it's not easy in this COVID days when you're on back-to-back virtual calls. So thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I was just telling you before the call recording started that I'm at my farm. So it's just over with 60 lengths of swimming at the pool. So that's what, and I'm happy. I never say no to an entrepreneur. So knowing Nisheeth, who's been an entrepreneur for a couple of years, I would never say no to a request on that, even if I have a much more important call internally or externally. So always there for that.
Thank you. And thank you. And thanks for all your support that you have given to us at UniHyr over the last 2 years as well. So Visham, I'll just directly jump in. We have 15, 20 minutes and I want to make this as enriching a conversation as it can be for a lot of those people who are going to watch it, especially the entrepreneurs who want to become entrepreneurs and are already entrepreneurs. I mean, first of all, tell me what's the secret sauce, right? I mean, what gave us the top three things that you would want to tell people about building successful organizations pretty much from scratch, right? And what are those things one needs to really think about when they are looking to build scalable, profitable, and sustainable enterprises?
Okay. So there's no secret sauce as such, but you know what? Somehow internally, I always, when I was like really as young as probably 9 or 10 years old, my dad used to always tell everyone that I was used to be good at maths. So DPS, typical geeky kind of kid. So I used to always say, hey, guy will become an industrialist. So somehow probably when the childhood I was talked about so much, though dad was in the government, I was talked so much about becoming an entrepreneur that it just stuck in my mind all throughout. So even during my engineering days, during my MBA days, my first placement from campus, the only thing I asked the person who was placing me was, are you going to give me something which is entrepreneurial? So it was so much into me that that's what I turned out to be an entrepreneur always. So if I would say hi to Nisheeth, it would be behind it, would be, you know what, down the line, I'll probably do something with Nisheeth in some form of the way for helping out my business. So the networking, the skills that you have to have for partnerships, the patience that is required, the belief that it's required consistently, the shrewdness that's required to take a call saying that, hey, you know, this is not working, so this has to be cut today itself or whatever. So those things just inculcated over time. But the one that has been most successful and stayed with me, probably you can ask your partner, is where my networking skills. I've always been decently nice, helpful to anyone that has come in front of me during a job time or before and after. So I believe it's a 360 degrees that today, if I'm working in a corporate, tomorrow I'll be an entrepreneur. So I would always respect my vendors in that way, support them in that way, give them an opportunity. Those are exactly those things that I would expect when I become an entrepreneur, as you would also, Jit. So I would always do what you do to your people, your teams, what you would be doing to your external players, even as an entrepreneur, or in whatever you're doing. I would do it for what I would need when I become one tomorrow. So it just has been a part of me all throughout. And if you ask any of my friends that whether they would know me during the job days or college days, is there anything else that he expected out of Visham? They will say no. He always was supposed to be and is one entrepreneur. So, and one of the things I always do in this call itself, I will tell everybody who's seeing it that the best way to live your life is an entrepreneur. Even though if you're an entrepreneur, I used to be excite myself being saying, hey, I'm an entrepreneur in my company also. But to be a true entrepreneur, it's just 1 or 2 years of real struggle. After that, it's a far more fulfilling life. So yeah, so that thought process probably stayed with me all throughout, and that's what I'm here for. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Yeah, I
So
believe
it's just inside,
networking,
too much inside in me. Yeah.
yeah, and I believe networking is definitely one of those things which which sounds very obvious, but it's really rare to find people who can network really well. And because the real reason is networking doesn't have a defined rule book or playbook that these are the steps 1 2 3 you need to do to network. It's just the personality, it's just the way you think and engage with people, which makes you a good networker. But in terms of, while obviously networking seems to be like a strong
Right.
thing, but in terms of the first initial years, like that's like a make or break for any entrepreneurs. Like you have an idea, you kind of really execute those ideas, you try and scale up and all those things. So any thoughts on, or any sort of philosophy that you have, having done 3 organizations, that you know so possibly when you were starting off Goals 101, from the previous 2 organizations, you knew that right now this has to be done because at this stage this works and this doesn't work, from an idea execution standpoint, from building the initial team, building the initial processes and all those things. Any thoughts on that?
So you know what? When I started my first business and when we crossed 100 crores of revenue as a bootstrap company in the first business itself, I was on a forum on TIE where all we had, I think, the leading 4 venture capitalists on my left side, and I was there as the only bootstrap guys. And this was like a hall full of, let's say, 300-400 entrepreneurs, and so they kept all obviously entrepreneurs, young smart guys like you, were asking all the questions to these venture capitalists that, hey, you know what, in smart way trying to pitch themselves. And then I stood up and when it was my chance to give that 2 minutes, I said, hey, you know what? These 4 people sitting on my left are outstandingly intelligent guys because they're going to invest in 10. One succeeds big way and half of it succeeds halfway also. They're happy. But for all of you sitting 300 out of you, there's just those 30. So the rest of the 270 are taking too much of a risk buying these guys. I think the biggest challenge that happens today in the entrepreneurial world is that all of us are looking for funding. And everybody's trying to say, you know what, I'm going to keep my KPIs right. I'm going to keep my vectors right. I'm a businessman first and entrepreneur second. So the first thing that I would give as a thing that has to go out, and which is very difficult in today's environment because of the money, is it's like Shah Rukh Khan. Everybody cannot be a Flipkart, right? And so for the and the reason that I'm saying a small actor would start thinking, everybody starts thinking to be the Shah Rukh Khan. A lot of us would fail and maybe get disgruntled along the way. The first thing I would say is that your unit economics, which is a word that we now hear too often, has to work right. You have to have cash flow literally flowing in your first company at any cost. Anything else that you think, you know what, I've got an awesome product, it's going to scale up. There will be 20 people who will make outstanding, they're super intelligent, far more intelligent than me. Above networking is obviously intelligence and hard work. They will succeed in that. But 980 of us, out other than the 220 people who have those skills, will be vying for that money, will not be thinking of how to work hard brick by brick like our parents or the old industrialists did work.
Yeah.
Those are true businessmen people. Those are the true entrepreneurs. Today, the entrepreneurial world has become literally a glam world. That,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? I talked about raising $500,000 as my seed funding. You know what? I've raised five. The value of raising 2 million, 5 million, 25 million has almost become a normal thing. But most of those funding are going into the big volume of the funding are going to either successful entrepreneurs, or it's going to people who are already taking their higher rounds or whatever. So if you hear of a $1 billion funding going into India, let's say a majority of that would go to really already successful growth stage companies,
Yeah.
while others would get some money. But the race to fundraise versus the race to ensure that your cash flow coming into your pocket is the dilemma that the founders really need to move out of. They really need to go back and take a decision, like you take a decision that, hey, this is the thing that I will never falter upon. I have to say, next 2 years, the only thing I will think is cash. That they start thinking that, you will get outcomes. So I'll give you a great example of one of my ex-employees in my first company. I had a junior from my MBA school called Hari Nair.
Mhm.
Very simple guy, but focused on getting outcomes, kind of thing for his business. Literally, example of true grit is them.
Mhm.
Today, he runs one of the leading data science teaching institutions called, I think it's called what's that? So last year's turnover was 300 crores. Bootstrapped. I think the bottom lines will be upward of 25 to 50 crores. They
Mhm.
took 10 years to build it. But is that the true business versus even the edtech funded companies? I would call them as true entrepreneurs or businessmen rather than others who've waited for 5 years just to raise their fund by making their products and KPIs right. So thought process is what I would suggest a lot of us to change. The 980 guys, out of which even if I'm able to convince 909, not a couple of them to
Sure.
start thinking cash in their business process, will be able to get that. Otherwise, right now, what is, hey, you know what? Nisheeth will come to Goals101 and say, can I get you as a client? Because I have to show like 5 clients to a possible investor. Now that's fair, but if coming to me and saying, you know what, I'll save you 10 lakhs for which I need 5 lakh rupees, and how to get that pitch right for getting that, even, hey, you know what, my product will work half manual, is a far better pitch for your company and for my company also. So I don't want just a tick mark company working for me. So my thing to the reason of why some are failing is because of the consistent thought process of raising funds. How do I get those things right while the cash is getting really on the side? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, interesting thought because, obviously in the circles I go to and there's a lot of discussion on funding, on how to raise funds and all those things. But I think there is also one sort of a conflicting and, I can call it almost like a complaining view from the entrepreneurial world, the larger entrepreneurial world, not the world which is flush with money, is the, there is a lot of talk on unit economics, as you say. There's a lot of talk from the VC ecosystem on building a sustainable organization. But when it comes to sort of walking that talk, it doesn't work out, because the moment when you're sitting across a VC, I mean a big VC or medium sized small VC, is like, they they talk of scale. They want like a accelerated growth as well as a sustainable unit economics, right? I mean, while this is an utopian world that you get both in one, but it's very difficult to get both side by side. So a lot of entrepreneurs say that yes, there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of forums where VCs and others discuss that unit economics has to be strong, but eventually when you sit across the table to them, all they're looking for is like the 3x, 10x, 5x growth in next 2 years. I mean, do you agree with that, or what's your view on this?
So first of all, no one is wrong. First of all, an entrepreneur looking for money from them is not wrong. Every entrepreneur, first of all, thinks that their business is the business.
Sure.
So, and with that thought process, 9 out of those 10 people will be disgruntled if they're just buying for that VC money. Look at their side of the business, which I realized only in years of experience, was very few have got their carries, as in like carries means the income that they earn as partners. They work very hard. For them, from a distance, they have to run a company, which is very difficult. Some people have not done well compliance wise, or some people have grown their company and they just let it fall. So a lot of money has not been made. Exits have been difficult. Value generations have happened. The only value generation that they have got is the secondary rounds happening from a Series B, Series C, or probably beyond.
Yep.
How many acquisitions have happened? How many listings have happened? So it's quite frustrating for them also. So for them to maybe look at a use case which is small, and that getting an exit versus they just being 4 partners in a company being able to maximum probably think of 50 companies in together, they have to look at a use case which is much bigger. So yes, while they will talk about meeting you all means all of us. At the end of the day, until the use case is huge, it's unfair to expect them to put money. So even if some of them would have put that would have been out of maybe a connect, out of maybe a individual founder's strength, saying that at least maybe even if it's a $50 million exit, maybe he'll be able to do that kind of stuff. But otherwise, their frustrations out of not being able to get exits from the small scale businesses to the level of hard work they've done is the reason of they now going and saying, hey, you know what, this entrepreneur has done it. This probability of now, so we have 10, 12 years of good entrepreneurial, I'm saying talent in the market. They're picking up, most of them are picking up the old ones, or who have shown traction. And that's what it's going to be. It's going to get tougher and tougher. So anybody who's expecting that they will get a golden chance or a golden boost suddenly from VC is literally going to be like a needle in a haystack. So that's why I would say, even if your company has become a couple of years old, just focus on generating some sort of revenue and cash. If that is happening, Visham Sikand is an investor. I'm saying there will be a couple of players who will be investors who would be saying, you know what, this is a fundamentally robust thought process company rather than just in the air, you know what, I'm going to change the world tomorrow. The change in the world tomorrow thought process are there with the venture capital, and that's how it should be. That's why the Flipkarts or the Olas and the other big baskets of the world happen. And those itself are equal to their entire fund. So they are looking at those big use cases itself. Yeah. So nothing wrong at their side. Let me tell you that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it is a difficult balance, but it's a balance that one
Yeah.
has to maintain, right? I mean, that's how things are. So, so talking about exits, Visham, you talked about exit, right? I mean, while obviously when you're building the company, you don't think that, I'm building this company to exit, right? All you do is build company which creates value for its customers and clients. But having done one, I would say two, but one prominent exit yourself,
Right.
I mean, looking back, if you have to kind of really, uh, if you have any thought on, what is it that makes the companies, exit worthy, or what is it that attracts the attention of people who are going to possibly acquire it? I mean, the answer can be as simple as, good, solid business with strong fundamentals. But is there something else that an entrepreneur has to do or has to build the company to make sure the exit is a much more real possibility?
Yeah. So you know what? When my investment banker, I had come to in my previous company, had come to me for saying that, hey, would you like to raise fund? I said no, we're not. We were profitable, right? So it's very rare for anybody to go and say that we don't want to raise funds. I've had people on the board of my companies who had underwritten checks for term sheets for $5 million, which we didn't take, which is very tempting for any entrepreneur. Trust me, any entrepreneur in the world, literally. I asked him, hey, you know what? I would like to do a strategic partnership with these four players. Can you do something that he said, look, investment bankers don't do partnerships, but let me at least write to them. So he wrote to some of them, and obviously we got positive response because of a couple of things: the kind of board we had, the kind of business we were doing, which was very replicable to what they were doing. The same companies were doing in US. So it was an entry strategy. But I asked him, so it really went very fast. From the time we met the investment banker in 9 months, which was our third year only, we got acquired for a decent amount of money. And then I asked him, what is the secret sauce? How did we get this exit so fast? And because our lives changed, we didn't need to work as such probably after that and all. He said every product has a buyer somewhere in the world. Obviously, for example, you would be doing something on HR tech. There will be somewhere sitting somewhere who's an HR company who thinks that, hey, I can't build this myself. Can I go and buy this out kind of thing rather than build it out kind of thing. So everywhere there's a buyer for your company. Again, the network, the ability to reach that player at the right time with the right positioning helps. So never, if you're building something which has some technology wrapped around it, is definitely is viable somewhere. So how do you reach that is a skill. So the skill is like exactly saying that, hey, you know what, the skills are soft skills. So the investment banker and us, we ensured. I went to the US. I was studying at Harvard at that time. Ensured that I met the president of that company somewhere over there, so that he sees, hey, this seems to be the right, fundamentally right. Second critical thing for true outcomes is compliance, which India we ignore a lot of times. They would go really deep into what you have done in the past,
Mhm.
every aspect of it. So we never did anything less than KPMG, for example, for our audits. No small companies do that because they think, you know what, why? But I went to KPMG and I started with the lowest possible fees probably they would have ever done with anyone and said, you know what, I'm going to exit on this basis. So they made
Hi, Visham.
beyond the exit also. So they made money. So you should be able to ensure that every aspect, every brick that you're building is is as per what's required by the end company. That you know what, these are the kind of people. This is the board. That's the business. That's the audit. Every aspect has to be built very spick and span to ensure your outcome. Do not think that a company will just come and see that it's doing well and they'll just buy you out. So yeah, so every aspect has to be right, and there's a buyer for everyone everywhere, somewhere in the world.
Yeah. A couple of last questions, which
Yeah.
we're running out of time. So one of the things, one of the things that I have noticed you do in Goals 101 is that you have built a very solid, management team comprising of very seasoned professionals,
Right.
vertically specializing in each of those areas, right? Uh, uh, and as entrepreneurs, a lot of entrepreneurs falter in kind of building that team or maybe delaying in building that team for a later duration, right? So what do you think is the right time, and how do you go about really building that initial management team or that team which brings about those transformations in the organizations and all those things?
Yeah. So you should have a couple of things on this one. First, you should try and, as you have, I have a counter to that. You should always try and have your co-founders in a multiple or multiple, because if you have, for example, if you have two, two means a dispute. If, for example, you don't agree to one and your partner agrees to one, it's a dispute, right? So if you have three, at least there are two on one side and one, so there's a decision. So I always say have your partners in the beginning is into odd numbers.
Okay.
The second, and these are fundamental things, and I was taught by someone very senior on all these things.
Okay.
The second is absolute transparency. Even if you're really doing something absolutely crappy, go and tell your partner, you know what, I'm doing something crappy. I didn't work for the last 4 days, and I'm not going to work for the next 40 days. You should have complete trust and openness in your partnerships. Coming back on when to add senior people, the more you add, it has to be different stages. So you should know what are the kind of people who are required in the 0 to, let's say, 10 stage. This is a 0 to 10 stage, which is extremely complicated and difficult to do at this in any company. For that, you need to convince people into different kind of people are required at that stage, in which, for example, total hustlers are required in that. Then you have a stage which is 10 to 100. Then you require mid-level management to come into you, and you have to convince them. Nowhere I'm talking about cash. Today also, for example, I was taking an interview from one of the guys that I had to bring in, very senior guy, not beyond our budget. And I have those 7 or 8 things that I always know that these guys will ask now. It's out of experience. Probably I can train your HR team also into getting that for startups. Hey, you know what, how do I be assured of my risk that I'm going to take? How do I know this is stocks are going to be not paper, but cash? It's like literally in my mind now that these are the 8 things they're going to ask. What is the way to show them what's going to be doing that? And together how we bring it. So those are simple now. It's like almost a thing that I know what to say. It comes out of practice. Tomorrow, for example, this is something that I can offer, that if you want to convince someone to join you who thinks that, hey, this is too much of a risk for me to take, or there's too much of a cut for me to take, call Visham Sikand. I'm a decent convincer in convincing senior guys to take in the entrepreneurial route, which they should also. So yeah, I think it's a lot of practice. And the different stages is only that you have to be sensible. As I told you, I was always thinking I was an entrepreneur, so I would know what to get at 0 to 10, what to get from 10 to 100. And today, obviously, we have gone beyond 100. So I know you have to get like the MD of Oracles, or you have to get a global head of technology from somewhere. Yeah. So yeah, it's just I think it's just natural that it probably flows in. Yeah. So that's right. And you should know those 8 questions that these guys are going to ask, and have the most outstanding answers well rehearsed in advance for them.
I mean, you're going to get a call from me very soon on this, since you offered.
Absolutely. Anyone you want to convince to join you.
So, Visham, I think our last question, I think, and if you're talking and you're having a conversation in August 2020, or for that matter, if you're having any conversation in 2020, not to talk about COVID will be like
right.
A big mistake. So, a lot of people are terming or kind of looking at this whole COVID experience as like change, completely changing and transforming the way we do business. Some of them I talked to, they have said, no, it's just okay. I know it's a big thing, but everything will be back to what it was earlier in the due course of time. But I'm kind of really wanting to understand from you, if let's say today a guy is thinking about a certain idea or trying to get into the entrepreneurship kind of a thing, does he need to have a sort of a different thought process given this COVID background, the way he should think about his ideas and the way he should go about setting up his business?
If I had to choose a time when I would be an entrepreneur, it would be either around maybe 2012, when the fundings really started going crazy, 12, 13, 14, or maybe today. Because today is a golden chance that you can pick up a problem that companies are facing, and how do you solve this through either technology or through some sort of automation. For example, yesterday, one of the most outstanding team members in my team called up and said, you know what, in the Zoom calls, it's the virtual reality is not happening, augmented reality. So I can't see, and she's literally standing in front of me. Can I have classrooms in which people can be sitting in front of me? I said, how much time are you going to take to make that happen? So he said maximum 4 months. So I said, hey, you know what? That's exactly what my daughter was saying, that I'm not feeling the experience of going to the school. So do these big companies coming up with that? I don't know whether those are coming, or is it too complicated? This is the best time to find a problem, because the problems have suddenly become new. All the problems in the world are absolutely new. Everybody's at the same slate, as in the same level, and anybody can pick up any of those 1,000 problems that have come up. Different industries have different airplane, like travel has something else, HR would have something else, we would have something else, banks have something else. Outstanding time. I think that when did you have a scenario when everything was at 0 for everyone else?
Yep.
And some companies minus 100 right now. So I think the innovation, this will bring out the biggest possible innovations in the world. So an outstanding, both in pharma, any industry. Think of an industry and say, oh my God, there are hundreds of issues everybody is facing. And we are still stuck with our old thought processes of those old businesses that we have been building since years. These guys are going to come and, for example, just say, hey, you know what, I know this is your problem and this can be solved in this way. And they will say, hey, I don't need anything else. So everything else will go junk. Innovation will pick up. So my request to everybody who's doing business is, if you are old, have a team which completely thinks only of this. Every day they should wake up to think, what is that three challenges that are extremely critically coming up and how can we solve that? If you're new, this is the best time to do it. Try and go to your bosses and say, you know what, I want to be an incubator in your company. Give me half my salary. I want to incubate this product and yours. You can take half of that as an equity. Probably some of those things will really be the ways for companies to work on. And that's what I'm, for example, doing with this kid of ours in our company, three of them.
Very
So
interesting.
it's a golden time, golden time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I agree. So much to innovate, so many new problems to solve, and all that.
Yeah.
Visham, what's the next big thing coming up with Goals 101? What are the new things that we can hear from Goals 101, which you can share? Any new areas?
Yeah.
I'm sure during a journey of startups, you are always working on something new. So what's new coming up from Goals 101?
So this year, so when you said COVID is good or bad for us or whatever, so I'm just trying to multiply. We will do our revenue or at least contract value 45 times of last year. And last year wasn't bad for us. We'll
Awesome.
break even. We will have two extremely strategic partnerships PR going out in the market. First is probably next week or itself. I'm saying some of the global partnerships. So I like to stay below the radar till it reaches a certain stage. And now it's time for us to go and talk to the world. So yeah, so we are genuinely, this has been good for our health. This has been good for our time to build our products. This has been good for us for revenue and partnerships. So it hasn't been better for us. So yeah, that's why I really like this period.
Wonderful, wonderful, Visham. And both Manav and I will wait for that invite to the break-even party whenever
Yeah.
you organize it.
See you in November then. Done.
Great, Vishal.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks a
Thanks.
lot for your time. It was really wonderful, and I'm sure there's a lot of nuggets that people can find in this conversation. And all the
Absolutely.
best for Goals 101.
Thank you so much. You enjoy yourself too. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Take care.